The Earth's representatives arrived at the summit in a cloud of uncertainty. The Zorathians had chosen a neutral space station, nestled in the heart of the Galactic Council's most sophisticated territories, a place where species of every shape, size, and intelligence came together. The humans, freshly arrived from Earth, were filled with a mix of hope and anxiety. This was their chance to prove humanity's worth in a galactic arena. But the gravity of the situation was undeniable. They were the underdogs. On the day of the summit, the Grand Hall was filled with the representatives of the most advanced civilizations the universe had ever known. The Zorathians, tall and sleek with smooth silver skin, stood at the head of the assembly. Their empire was a titan among the stars, and their power had been unmatched for centuries. It was clear they saw humanity's arrival as nothing more than a formality, an insignificant blip on the radar of galactic history. To them, humans were little more than a curiosity, an amusing oddity with no real place among the stars. A sharp, robotic voice echoed across the chamber as the Zorathian leader, Vraxtor, addressed the gathered crowd. Humanity has shown potential, but they are primitive in comparison to the mighty races of the galaxy. This summit will serve as their initiation into the galactic fold. But first, we will test them, prove they are worthy. The challenge was laid out with chilling precision. Each species would demonstrate their technological achievements, their scientific advancements, and their military might. The Zorathians assumed that this test would be a walk in the park. They had never encountered a species that posed any true challenge. The test was to be a simple one, a series of intellectual puzzles, physical feats, and strategic simulations. They would show the humans their place, and then humanity would leave the council, humbled, with nothing more than the knowledge of their insignificance. Humans had their own idea of what this summit meant. Earth's diplomats, scientists, and military leaders were determined to represent their species with pride. But they couldn't ignore the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Their technology was considered outdated by galactic standards. They were still in the early stages of interstellar travel, and most of their advances were born of desperate ingenuity. But humans had something no other species had accounted for: resilience. As the challenges began, the representatives of Earth stood tall, unfazed. The first was an intellectual trial, solving a complex series of alien mathematical equations that even the Zorathian elite struggled with. The humans, with a combination of teamwork and sheer force of will, cracked the code in record time. The Zorathians exchanged uneasy glances, but that was only the beginning. Next came the physical challenge. Earth's athletes, though not the strongest or fastest by galactic standards, displayed an unexpected ferocity, endurance, and tactical intelligence that stunned the audience. Instead of brute strength, they used strategy, exploiting the weaknesses in the alien design. The Zorathians had expected an easy win, but humans proved to be adaptable, outwitting the seemingly insurmountable obstacles. With each test, the humans revealed not just their abilities, but their instinct to never give up, never back down. The Zorathians, who had faced countless species across the universe, began to feel a stir of something unfamiliar: doubt. As the final challenge approached, a war simulation, where teams from each species would command fleets in an all-out strategy game, the Zorathians were ready to make their final move. They had designed a test that would expose the frailties of human military thinking. But humanity had something that no alien strategy could predict: creativity. The human team took a risk, sacrificing a portion of their fleet as a distraction to set a trap. The Zorathians never saw it coming. In the end, the humans won, not through superior force, but through an unexpected stroke of brilliance. As the final simulation ended in victory, the entire hall fell silent. The Zorathians, who had expected nothing but failure, were forced to reckon with a truth they hadn't anticipated. Humans were unpredictable. They were far more than primitive creatures. They were a force to be reckoned with. And that was just the beginning. The results of the previous challenges lingered in the air as the Zorathians silently assessed the human performance. They could no longer dismiss the Earthlings as mere curiosities, but to them, they were still nothing more than pawns in a much larger game. We underestimated them, Vraxtor muttered to his council, a rare flicker of frustration crossing his stoic face. These humans do not fit the mold of any species we have encountered, but they are still primitive, easily manipulated. Despite the unsettling display of humanity's capabilities, the Zorathians felt confident they still held control. The next phase of the summit was designed to put humans in their place, a challenge that would expose their vulnerability and remind them of their place among the stars. The Zorathians had a plan. They would offer humanity access to advanced technology, weapons, and knowledge, but only if Earth agreed to a subservient role. They believed this show of benevolence would demonstrate the superiority of the Zorathian Empire while solidifying their dominion over Earth. The humans, however, were far from naive. Earth's top diplomat, Ambassador Alexandra Ward, had already sensed the undercurrents of manipulation during the earlier tests. She had no intention of bowing down to alien overlords, no matter how impressive their tech or power seemed. There was more at stake here than just a symbolic victory for humanity. It was the future of Earth, and she wasn't about to let her species become pawns in an intergalactic chess game. But despite her suspicions, Ward agreed to the proposed terms, knowing that playing along could buy them time to uncover Zorathian motives. The humans agreed to accept the technological advancements, but on one condition. They would maintain full sovereignty over Earth. The Zorathians, sensing victory, accepted the deal, confident that humanity would bow to the sheer weight of their galactic might. As the summit continued, however, the unease that had begun to grow among the Zorathian Council didn't dissipate. The humans' adaptability wasn't just a stroke of luck, it was something deeper. A Zorathian general, Thyrakal, who had witnessed the humans' ingenious tactics firsthand, began to question the wisdom of underestimating them further. She could not shake the image of Earth's representatives, standing tall, unbroken, and unyielding, no matter how hard they were tested. Why do they refuse to give in? She asked her fellow officers. Every challenge should have broken them, but instead, they keep pushing. Vraxtor's cold response was dismissive. They are still primitive. Their unpredictability makes them dangerous, but they lack the discipline to ever truly challenge us. However, Thyrakal wasn't convinced. She noticed the humans weren't simply reacting to challenges. They were adapting, evolving in real time. It wasn't just their resolve that impressed her. It was the fact that they never seemed to be without a solution, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. There was something about their mentality, their refusal to submit, that sent a cold shiver down her spine. The Zorathians tried to bury their doubts, pushing forward with their plan. But that very evening, in a quiet corner of the station, something happened that neither the Zorathians nor the humans could have predicted. Ambassador Ward, aware that her species had caught the attention of the galaxy's most powerful empire, was approached by an unexpected ally, an alien race known as the Orcs. The Orcs were an enigmatic species, known for their merciless ruthlessness, and their sudden offer to help humanity had more than just political implications. It meant that the balance of power in the galaxy was beginning to shift. The Orcs had been watching the summit from the shadows. They had seen the Zorathians' unease as the humans continued to perform beyond expectations. But more importantly, they had noticed something else. The humans had ignited something in the galaxy, a spark that no one could predict. This alliance, though unexpected, could give humanity the leverage they needed. And thus, the true battle for Earth's future, one that would shake the very foundations of galactic politics, was about to begin. As the summit pressed on, the tension between the Zorathians and humans simmered beneath the surface. Despite the Zorathians' outward calm, their leaders were beginning to show signs of unease. The humans had proven to be far more resilient, resourceful, and unpredictable than any of them had anticipated. Every challenge, every test, seemed to highlight not just humanity's intelligence and adaptability, but something deeper, something the Zorathians could not put their finger on. Ambassador Ward, now growing suspicious of the Zorathians' motives, decided to dig deeper. She knew the stakes were higher than just winning a few challenges. Earth's future depended on understanding exactly what the Zorathians were hiding. With the help of a small group of human diplomats and experts, Ward began to investigate the Zorathian archives, hidden in the deepest recesses of their vast imperial databases. The humans knew that the Zorathians had a reputation for secrecy, and any attempt to uncover their true intentions could lead to disastrous consequences. But Ward was determined. She uncovered a piece of ancient history, a story buried beneath layers of propaganda and veiled threats, one that chilled her to the core. The Zorathians had once faced a species, similar in form to humanity, that had nearly wiped them out in a galactic war centuries ago. These beings, the predecessors, had been remarkably similar to humans in both intelligence and adaptability. The Zorathians, who had once ruled the galaxy with absolute power, had seen their empire crumble in the wake of the predecessors' relentless drive for survival. It had been a conflict unlike anything the Zorathians had ever experienced. The predecessors' brutal ability to adapt to any situation, their uncanny instincts for survival, had driven the Zorathians to the brink of extinction. In a desperate move, the Zorathians had launched a final offensive against the predecessors, using their superior technology to wipe them out. But there had been no victory for the Zorathians. The predecessors had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. But the Zorathians had learned one undeniable truth from that war. The greatest enemy to a powerful empire is an adaptive species that refuses to be broken. Ward couldn't believe what she was reading. The Zorathians feared humanity because they saw Earth's potential as an echo of their ancient enemies, the very traits that made humans so unpredictable. Their resilience, their refusal to surrender, their instinct to overcome any obstacle, were exactly what had nearly brought the Zorathian Empire to its knees centuries ago. It was then that Ward made a chilling realization. The Zorathians weren't just testing humanity for entertainment or curiosity. They were terrified that humanity might repeat the rise of the predecessors, an unstoppable adaptive force that would reshape the galaxy. The Zorathians feared that Earth's species, if left unchecked, might evolve into the kind of empire that would challenge their supremacy once again. Ward knew that this knowledge was both a gift and a curse. The Zorathians could not allow humanity to rise unchecked, but they also could not risk exposing the truth about their past. In a cold, calculating move, Ward made her decision. She would have to confront the Zorathians with the truth, but she would do so carefully, using the very fear that they had of humanity's potential to gain leverage. She was playing a dangerous game, and the stakes had just grown much higher. The summit had now entered a more delicate phase. As Ambassador Ward carefully pondered how to present the Zorathians' dark history, she knew that any wrong move could trigger an irreversible escalation. She had uncovered a truth that would shake the galaxy to its core, but she had to be strategic. Yet little did she know, the situation was about to spiral out of her control in the most unexpected way. The Zorathians, seemingly undeterred by the humans' victories in the earlier tests, had begun to offer the humans a taste of their technological advancements. At first, the offer seemed generous, a gesture of goodwill to welcome Earth into the fold of galactic civilization. The Zorathians presented humanity with access to advanced medical technologies, energy sources, and cutting-edge weapons, all while urging humans to accept their position as a subservient member of the galactic community. In exchange for these benefits, the Zorathians demanded only one thing: humanity's compliance with galactic law, pledging allegiance to the Zorathian Empire. The terms were clear. Humanity could prosper, but only if it accepted its place beneath the Zorathian Empire. The humans were promised security, prosperity, and a future where Earth would no longer be a forgotten backwater planet. Ambassador Ward, already suspicious of the Zorathians' intentions, was deeply wary of the offer. She was not prepared to allow humanity to become subjugated, no matter how enticing the technological advancements appeared. Yet, despite her hesitations, Earth's leadership debated the proposal. They knew how much they could gain from the Zorathian technologies. Some saw it as an opportunity to leap forward, others as an inevitable step toward survival. But Ward couldn't shake the feeling that the Zorathians were hiding their true intentions. And then, in the midst of these deliberations, came the shocking betrayal. One of Earth's own military leaders, General Samuel Harris, who had been among the first to advocate for cautious optimism at the summit, suddenly sided with the Zorathians. Harris, a decorated war hero, had long been an advocate for building alliances in the galaxy, but his decision to work with the Zorathians went far beyond what anyone expected. He was a man who had always valued power, strategy, and survival. Yet, it was clear he had been swayed by the Zorathians' offer. Harris secretly met with Thraxtor, the Zorathian leader, and agreed to offer humanity's military forces to the Zorathians in exchange for personal power and influence within the Zorathian Empire. In his mind, aligning with the Zorathians meant a chance for Earth to enter a new era, one where they could dominate the galaxy under the protection of the Empire. When Ward learned of the betrayal, she was stunned. Harris had not only undermined Earth's diplomatic standing, but he had also opened the door for the Zorathians to tighten their grip on Earth. The general's actions threatened to unravel everything humanity had worked for at the summit. Worse still, his deal with the Zorathians was done in secret, without the approval of the Earth's leadership, placing the future of the entire planet in jeopardy. Ward knew that she couldn't let this stand. The Zorathians, already fearful of humanity's potential, would now use Harris's betrayal as a way to manipulate Earth into submission. If humanity didn't act fast, Earth could lose its independence before it even had a chance to take its place among the stars. In a desperate bid to expose the truth, Ward confronted Harris in a private meeting. "You've doomed us all," she said, her voice cold with anger. "Do you not see? The Zorathians want nothing more than to break humanity's spirit, and you're helping them do it." Harris sneered, his face filled with the conviction of someone who believed they had chosen the winning side. "I've made the only logical choice, Ambassador. I've secured Earth's future." Ward, now with no other choice, resolved to act. She gathered her most trusted allies, both human and alien, and devised a plan to expose Harris's treachery. But as she prepared to confront the Zorathians and stop the plot in its tracks, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the stakes were even higher than she had imagined. The Zorathians were playing a far deeper game, one that humanity had yet to fully understand. Ambassador Ward's mind raced as she processed the gravity of General Harris' betrayal. The future of Earth hung in the balance, and now, with Harris aligning himself with the Zorathians, humanity was caught between two deadly forces: an alien empire that had once nearly been destroyed by an adaptive species, and their own military leader, who was blinded by the promise of power. If Ward couldn't act fast, the Zorathians' plan would unfold, with Harris as their puppet, leaving humanity enslaved beneath an empire that would never let them rise. Ward called an emergency meeting of the Earth's leadership, but she knew that convincing them to act would be no easy task. Many of them were already swayed by Harris's promises, dazzled by the prospect of technological advancements and the protection of the Zorathian Empire. Ward was outnumbered. She had to find a way to turn the tide before it was too late. But the decision was no longer entirely in her hands. Across the galaxy, something strange was happening. The Orcs, the ruthless and enigmatic species that had approached humanity in secret, had begun to make their move. The Orcs had remained in the shadows during the summit, watching and waiting, but now they saw an opportunity to exploit the chaos surrounding Harris' betrayal. Their motives were unclear, but one thing was certain: the Orcs were just as unpredictable as the humans. In a bold move, the Orcs made contact with Ward and her allies, offering an alliance. They had no love for the Zorathians, whose dominance in the galaxy had long overshadowed their own ambitions. The Orcs had watched the Zorathians with disdain. knowing that their iron grip was only held in place through fear and manipulation. Now, with Harris's betrayal threatening to solidify the Zorathian foothold on Earth, the Orcs saw an opening to undermine the Zorathians from within. The proposal from the Orcs was simple. They would help humanity defeat the Zorathians, but in exchange, Earth would need to pledge allegiance to the Orcs in return. The Orcs would provide humanity with the means to strike back, advanced technology, military support, and intelligence, but it would come at a cost. Ward knew that accepting such an alliance could place Earth at the mercy of another empire, one just as dangerous as the Zorathians. But the situation had grown too dire to ignore. She couldn't allow the Zorathians to tighten their grip on Earth, nor could she trust Harris to lead them to safety. As Ward weighed the decision, she was left with a difficult choice: turn to the Orcs for help, or try to expose Harris's treachery and confront the Zorathians directly. Time was running out. The Zorathians were already moving to implement their final phase of the plan, enslaving Earth under their rule while using Harris as their puppet to enforce their will. Ward's decision was swift, and she knew the risks. She reached out to the Orcs, signaling her willingness to form an alliance. In return, the Orcs provided Earth with powerful weapons, stealth technology, and covert agents embedded within the Zorathian ranks. It was a dangerous game, one that could either give humanity the edge it needed to break free from the Zorathians' grip, or plunge the galaxy into an all-out war. With the Orcs at her side, Ward began to mobilize humanity's remaining forces, preparing for a confrontation that would reshape the future of the galaxy. But the Zorathians were not blind to these shifts. They were already aware of the growing threat posed by humanity and their new, unlikely allies. In a hidden chamber aboard the Zorathian flagship, Vraxtor's eyes narrowed as he reviewed intelligence reports. His worst fears were coming true. The humans, with the help of the Orcs, were preparing for war. But this time, it wouldn't be the Zorathians who held the advantage. The galaxy was on the verge of a conflict that would determine the future of not just Earth, but the entire galactic order. And at the heart of it all was humanity, the very species the Zorathians had once thought so easily controlled, now standing at the brink of becoming the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The alliance with the Orcs had shifted the balance of power, but it had also cast humanity into a conflict far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Earth, once a planet of relative obscurity, was now a central player in a galactic chessboard, and the stakes had never been higher. With the Orcs providing covert military support, advanced technology, and crucial intelligence on Zorathian movements, Ambassador Ward had initiated a quiet campaign of resistance. The war was now being fought not in open space, but in the shadows. In the depths of the Zorathian Empire, Vraxtor's paranoia grew with each passing day. The sudden influx of intelligence about human movements and the Orcs' involvement convinced him that humanity was no longer just an unpredictable nuisance. It had become a threat to the Empire's very existence. His spies reported that the humans had begun to make their first moves. Sabotage operations, the destruction of key Zorathian supply lines, and the assassination of high-ranking officials. The humans, with Orcs' help, had become experts in subterfuge. They attacked with precision, leaving behind no trace of their involvement except for the rising number of shattered Zorathian forces. Vraxtor had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now he was paying the price. The Zorathian response was swift and brutal. They began to send fleets to Earth, preparing to subdue the planet once and for all. They couldn't risk humanity growing stronger, and they were determined to crush this rebellion before it could gain traction. The final battle, however, was one of subterfuge and tactical ingenuity, not sheer firepower. On Earth, Ward had gathered a small but formidable group of resistance leaders, a ragtag team of soldiers, diplomats, hackers, and alien allies. They had one singular mission: disrupt the Zorathian Empire from within. Using Orc stealth technology, they infiltrated Zorathian military bases and communication hubs, planting false intel to confuse the enemy and disrupt their operations. Every day that the Zorathians spent tracking down false leads was another day humanity gained ground. Despite their successes, Ward knew they couldn't win this war in the shadows alone. Humanity's limited resources and technology were no match for the Zorathian fleet, and time was running out. The next phase of their plan was more dangerous, an all-out strike at the heart of the Zorathian Empire itself. But for that, they would need a full-scale alliance. Ward approached the Orcs once again, pleading for their open support in a more visible conflict. The Orcs, while ruthless and merciless, had their own reasons for wanting the Zorathians defeated, and they agreed to offer their forces in exchange for Earth's promise of future collaboration and independence. The Orcs were no allies to be trusted easily, but the humans had no choice. Their only chance at victory now lay in rallying as many forces as they could muster. As the first Zorathian fleet set its course for Earth, the human resistance stood ready. Earth's military, bolstered by Orcs' forces, was prepared to face the full might of the Zorathian Empire. For the first time in galactic history, humans were not just survivors. They were on the offensive, determined to prove that their place in the stars was not to be dictated by anyone, especially not the Zorathians. Ward stood on the bridge of Earth's newly built flagship, gazing at the stars beyond. The Zorathians would come, but humanity was no longer the weak, helpless species they had once been. They had evolved, adapted, and now they would fight. And the universe would soon learn that when humanity rose, they did so with a fierce, unwavering resolve. The first wave of the Zorathian fleet arrived at Earth's orbit, their massive warships blotting out the stars with their sheer size and firepower. The humans had expected this moment, but seeing the Zorathian war machines firsthand was an entirely different experience. The ships, gleaming metal monstrosities armed with planet-crushing weaponry, bore down on Earth with cold, inevitable precision. Ambassador Ward, now leading Earth's unified military command, stood at the helm of Earth's flagship, the Horizon's Edge. Her mind raced with calculations as she stared out into the vastness of space. This was no longer a matter of subtlety or sabotage. The time for subterfuge was over. Humanity was about to face the full wrath of an empire that had long ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. The only hope for survival was a counterattack that could catch the Zorathians off guard. The Orcs, with their superior knowledge of warfare and cunning strategies, had guided Earth's military to a new level of preparedness. They had adapted human tactics, blending them with Orc stealth technology and sophisticated weaponry. The result was a fleet that was smaller but far more agile than the Zorathian juggernauts. Earth's forces, though outnumbered, would fight in a way the Zorathians had never seen before, unpredictable, relentless, and smart. As the Zorathian ships entered Earth's atmosphere, the battle began. The first volley of energy blasts from the Zorathians came fast and furious, striking Earth's outer defenses with deadly accuracy. But what the Zorathians didn't expect was the rapid movement of Earth's ships, using the Orcs' stealth technology to slip in and out of the Zorathian radar range. Earth's forces struck from unexpected angles, their weapons much more precise and lethal than the Zorathians had anticipated. "We've got them off balance," Ward said to her commanding officers as she watched the unfolding chaos on the screen. "Keep them distracted. We need time for the second wave." The second wave of Earth's forces, consisting of stealth bombers and ground-based missile systems, launched their attack on the Zorathian flagship, the Imperial Citadel. The Zorathians, caught in a trap, scrambled to defend themselves. Their massive ships were designed for overwhelming force, not for the swift, tactical strikes that humans now unleashed. Back on the surface of Earth, the people watched in awe and terror as the battle unfolded in the skies. The Earth's military forces, now united with the Orcs, launched coordinated strikes against Zorathian ground forces. The Zorathians had underestimated the resolve of humanity. Their soldiers, motivated by the fight for their freedom and survival, fought with a fury that the Zorathians had never seen before. But the tide of war was far from certain. The Zorathians quickly began to adjust their strategy, dispatching elite warriors to the front lines, while their commanders on the flagship devised countermeasures to lock down Earth's communication networks. The Zorathian Empire had its own terrifying advantage, its overwhelming fleet and vast resources. Even if Earth and its allies could win one battle, they still had to contend with the entire might of the Zorathian military. However, just as the Zorathians began to regroup, a shocking development occurred. The Orcs, known for their ruthlessness and unpredictability, turned on the Zorathians. Their fleets, hidden within the shadows of the larger battle, suddenly launched a surprise offensive against the Zorathian flagship. The Zorathians had thought they controlled the Orcs, but they were wrong. The Orcs saw the Zorathians' empire as a threat to their own ambitions and seized this moment to strike when their enemy was vulnerable. The battle had now escalated into an all-out galactic conflict. The forces of Earth, the Orcs, and the Zorathians were locked in a struggle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. With each passing hour, humanity's resolve grew stronger, while the Zorathians, for the first time in centuries, found themselves losing control. But Ward knew that this was only the beginning. Victory was not yet assured, and the true test of humanity's strength had only just begun. The battle raged on for days, the sky over Earth a swirling chaos of explosions, laser fire, and the roar of warships tearing through space. Humanity, aided by the Orcs, had managed to gain a foothold against the Zorathian Empire, but the price was steep. Both sides had suffered immense casualties, and the war was reaching its breaking point. But it was clear, if humanity didn't make a decisive move soon, the Zorathians would regroup and crush them with their overwhelming force. Ambassador Ward stood at the helm of the Horizon's Edge, her eyes fixed on the holographic map that illuminated the war room. The Zorathian flagship, the Imperial Citadel, was still intact, its powerful shields keeping it almost impenetrable. But Ward knew that the key to victory lay in breaking the Citadel's shield. If they could do that, the entire Zorathian fleet would be vulnerable. She turned to her commanders, her voice calm but firm. "We have one chance to end this. We need to hit the Citadel's power core. If we take that down, their fleet will fall with it. Our best bet is a coordinated strike from both space and the surface. The Zorathians will expect us to be divided, but we can strike from both sides." The plan was risky. It required full cooperation between Earth's military, the Orcs, and a few remaining Zorathian dissidents who had defected after realizing the true nature of their empire. But Ward had no other choice. With every passing minute, the Zorathian forces were closing in. The Zorathians had the advantage of resources, but humanity had something they could never replicate: resolve. As the Horizon's Edge and the Orcs fleet moved into position, Earth's forces began their final assault. The ground forces launched an offensive, distracting the Zorathian infantry and drawing their attention away from the sky. Meanwhile, a specialized team of human pilots, led by Colonel Rachel Torres, launched their attack against the Citadel's weak spots. The Zorathians had no idea that the humans had perfected a weapon capable of piercing their shields, an Orcs-engineered EMP device. At the same time, Ward's signal reached the Zorathian dissidents, who had infiltrated the Citadel's internal systems. They initiated a sabotage operation from within, disabling the Citadel's communications and redirecting its power. The Zorathians, in their arrogance, had underestimated the ingenuity of humanity. The sabotage forced the Citadel to divert power to its defensive shields, leaving the core vulnerable for a critical strike. Colonel Torres and her team had one shot at this. With a precision only humans could muster, they flew their fighters directly into the heart of the Zorathian fleet, dodging massive fire from enemy warships, and deployed the EMP device right into the Citadel's core. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, a massive explosion rocked the Citadel, the shockwave rippling through the Zorathian ships, tearing apart their once unstoppable war machine. The shield collapsed. The Zorathian fleet was thrown into disarray, their ships vulnerable to the onslaught of human and Orcs forces. In that moment of chaos, the final blow came. The Orcs launched their own assault, decimating the remaining Zorathian fleet with their unmatched tactical brilliance. The tides of war had turned. Vraxtor, the Zorathian leader, watched from his command deck as his empire crumbled. He had miscalculated. He had underestimated the strength of humanity. And now, it was too late. On Earth, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. Humanity had not only survived, but had emerged as the ultimate victor in a war that would reshape the galaxy. The Zorathian Empire, once the greatest power in the universe, had been brought to its knees by a species they had once thought weak and insignificant. As Ward stood before the United Nations on Earth, addressing the people of the planet, her voice rang out with conviction. This is only the beginning. We are no longer bound by the constraints of our past. We have proven that humanity can not only survive, but thrive in the face of the greatest challenges the universe has to offer. Today, we take our place among the stars, not as subjects of empires, but as the free, indomitable force that we have always been. Humanity had risen, and the universe would never forget it.